Thursday, May 13th. We'll begin with a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Mrs. Galante, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fee?
Here.
Mr. Giroz?
Here.
Mr. Croner?
Here.
Mrs. Millfeld?
Here.
Mrs. Randall?
Here.
Mr. Meyer?
Here. We will open with proceedings to fill the vacancy for School Board Seat 7 as in the manner in which we've noticed. First, we'll have a motion to submit the 5 names into candidacy. And Mrs. Randall, please, can you make the motion?
Okay. The board will accept nominations from Carmela Rios, Michael D. Hooting. I'm sorry, I was hoping I would hear your name before. Gay Lay Mundy, Christy Casey, and Tyra Hildebrand to fill the vacant seat 7. And I so move.
Mrs. Muirfield, please, will you second?
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table. I suspect we Mrs. Muirfield is going to read the questions that will be presented to the candidates. And I understand we have a motion on the floor and we'll have to vote. Mr. Giroz will Mr. Giroz will be our timekeeper as Secretary of the Board. So with that, Mrs. Galante, please call the roll on the motion of the to consider the 5 candidates.
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. Giroz?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Millfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. So the 5 candidates accepted in nomination. In reverse order of alphabetical last name. That brings up, I believe, Christy Casey first. And you have an opportunity for opening statement. And there'll be the questions asked by Mrs. Muirfield, and you will have an opportunity for closing statement. And you have 15 minutes.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
Can everybody hear her?
Thanks.
Okay, you're on.
I'm Christy Casey. I'm seeking to fill seat number 7 on the Wauwatosa School Board for the remainder of its tenure. I'm confident that I bring varied and unique experiences to the table. I'm a Wauwatosa resident of 16 years. I am also a classroom teacher both in Illinois and Wisconsin. I've taught 1st and 3rd grade. I'm a parent, a community volunteer, what I believe to be an education advocate, and I have also now gained experience that has allowed me to view education through an administrative lens. I'm a founding member of Wauwatosa STEM, and I've served on its governance council for the last 6 years as both secretary, vice president, and president. And I've worked closely with the district administration to ensure the sustainability of that school's vision and mission, and have worked closely with the district to see the expansion of the STEM education program into the middle schools at both Whitman and Longfellow. These experiences have led me to National Louis University, where I've recently completed my master's in educational leadership with a charter school administration emphasis, which is rather a mouthful. And it was here that I really was able to view educational on a global perspective and through the administrative lens. And I'd like the board to know that I have been heavily involved with, Wauwatosa STEM, but I come today to you with no charter agenda. I believe that we have done charters in Wauwatosa. One we've done really well, the other one we've done well and learned some lessons along the way. But I'm confident that as we move forward with district initiatives that I'm not sure a charter is something that we need to accomplish that. We have a strong Montessori program that's growing. We have a STEM program in the middle school, and we have added courses to, strengthen our STEM educations at the high school level. And we just had a great review of our science curriculum, and I think we've picked a successful program for all students in the district. So please know that moving forward that I come free of a charter agenda, despite my experiences in that realm. So, thank you.
Great. You ready for your questions?
I am.
Then let's begin. How have your life experiences and skills prepared you for this responsibility?
I like that question because I certainly have considered serving on the school board in the past, but I would say 6 years ago, I certainly wasn't ready for this challenge. There were challenges, I think, and successes that I needed to experience before I could get to this point. It was really very interesting when I entered into my role in the charter role. I really entered it as a parent. But as I progressed along, I realized I started to see things through an administrative perspective. And I started to see that when I had conversations with the district level, that as far as the superintendent was concerned, we were just a little blip on his big radar, and that there is a much bigger picture that a superintendent and a school board has to keep in mind as they are making decisions about student learning. I think my work on the Governance Council has prepared me for this role. I've certainly learned that you can't make everyone happy. And if you are making decisions and you're navigating those decisions on what's best for kids, then that's what matters most. And then also when you make those hard decisions and knowing that not everyone is happy, it's how you proceed from that point that's most crucial, taking into even your opposing opinions, points of view. And I think initially with the charter school, we were met with much criticism. And at first I would kind of take offense to that and be like, oh, why are they attacking us? But if you can step back and take that emotion out of it and realize that, you know what, that's a really good question. And if I don't have a good answer for you, then I need to go back, whether it be to my teachers or to my council, and we need to be able to answer those questions. And so I think the critics and those tough questions only make an organization stronger if you can go back and really figure out what it is that you're trying to accomplish here. Another decision or another experience I think that has helped me is that, you know, sometimes you do have to make those tough decisions. Our Governance Council was looking at moving from everyday math to adopting Singapore math. And I remember we were at a Governance Council meeting and we were up for this vote. And I thought, oh, you know what, we're going to start this in K1 and we're going to roll it out. And my oldest son's not going to benefit from this. And that's not fair. But then I thought, you know what, making a decision based on just my child is not fair for other students. And so I realized that he had had experiences that other kids weren't going to have, and that was okay. And it was all part of his experience. And so as I move forward, my children, you know, serve as a compass in my decision making, but my children are all kids. And I think all kids serve as a reminder of what it is you need to keep in mind as you're making your decisions. I've also done some advocating at the state and national level for stronger charter laws and STEM education. So I think all of those experiences have helped me remain on the track to further educating myself and the families and people in Wauwatosa STEM. And we always need to be on a path of continuous improvement. We always need to be going back and reevaluating, why are we doing this? Is this the best way to do it? And I think these experiences have led me to this opportunity.
Thank you. Question 2, what is the difference between the board's role in governance and the superintendent's role in managing operations?
Well, I definitely think that the board sets policy and the framework that kind of governs the district and the direction in which the district will go. It's certainly not much unlike, you know, our government structure. There's a government element, an executive element, and a judicial element to being on a school board. The school board acts in a governance function where they provide and have opportunities to consider, approve, and disapprove matters that are submitted by the superintendent. And this provides continuity and the ability for the district to comply with state and federal laws and regulations. On an executive function, I think the board exercises their kind of decisions through the superintendent, who acts as chief executive officer. And as a board, we are ultimately responsible for student learning and student outcomes, and any decision that we ask the superintendent to carry out. So that leads me to our judicial function, and we serve as a body of appeals for grievances and compliances and complaints and criticisms that we need to make sure are in accord with our board policies. And that differs from the superintendent's role in the fact that we have hired the superintendent to carry all of this out, and we need to entrust in his capabilities and his expertise. And I believe that Dr. Ertl has put forth a tremendous administrative team with a vast amount of experiences, and they're overqualified, if I may. And we need to entrust in his team and him to manage and take care of the day-to-day processes of this district and what it takes to educate our children on a daily basis. I've seen boards in the past that have tried to, micromanage some of what is going on at the district level. If there's a situation where, Dr. Ertl presents his staffing plan, it's not our business to take certain pieces out and to look at them and vote on them. I mean, we need to entrust in Dr. Ertl and his staff that they are the experts and they know what we need to be doing to move forward to provide the best educational opportunities for our students. So that is the difference I see.
Thank you.
Question 3. Of all of the things the Wauwatosa School District is responsible for, what are the 3 most important to you?
I believe our primary function as a school board is to provide each student with an education of the highest quality, keeping in mind with their capacities to learn. And in doing that, the 3 things that I feel are most important are to provide quality choices and opportunities for families and students, whether they be courses, programs, bring your own technology to school. I think that's the most important, is to continually looking for best practices or the next best practices. And with that being said, we can have, bring your own technology to school, but what I think is super important is putting the best trained and qualified teachers in front of our students. Because for years, we have had successful children based on teachers. Teachers can teach in bathroom stalls with nothing else. So I believe that it's our responsibility to find the resources to train our teachers and to put the best teachers in front of our students. And we need to do all of this while being fiscally accountable and responsive to the Wauwatosa community. I think that's really important. It's very easy, I think, to throw, money at education and not do it thoughtfully. So on that note, we need to do it thoughtfully and also look at engaging the community and looking at educational partnerships as well as financial partnerships that can enhance our student learning environment.
Excuse me, we are at 11 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Question 4. What is the board's role in achieving the school district's mission?
With kind of going on what I said, I think it's our responsibility to kind of function as a support, develop the framework in which the district and administration can work within. And if we take this literally, it's working together with parents and community and providing opportunities to engage our parents and community members. I think for so long, there's been this urgent need to reform education, and we know that doesn't happen overnight. And I think much of our community has kind of washed their hands of public education. And they think, well, nothing's going to change. But there are ways other than financial ways to enhance our public education, and that's through partnerships and community involvement. So I think that's part of our job too, is to engage the community in supporting our mission.
Thank you. And finally, question 5. What should be the relationship of the school board with the local community?
In the sake of time, I've kind of brought that down to 3 E's, and that's my education background, my teacher background. For me, it's engagement, education, and enrichment. I think all of our decisions should have the community. Our students are first and foremost providing the best education, but we need to keep the community also in mind, and we need to engage them. We need to educate them, and we need to make decisions that can enrich our community. And that means going out there championing what it is that we're doing. I'd love for our district to sit down and look at what we've accomplished the last 8 years since Dr. Ertl has been here, because there have been some great gains made in that time when we were at a point where we had no leadership and we were closing schools. So I think we need to continue. There are still people out in the community that don't know much about the STEM school or the Montessori school, or that we're having a virtual school opening in the fall, or that there's STEM program at both of the middle schools, and kind of all that we've done to enrich our high school programs. So that's where I am on my commitment to being a board member and engaging the community. Do I have time for my closing statement?
We have a minute and a half.
Okay. My closing statement, I really would love to thank Lois Weber for her commitment to the students and her commitment to Wauwatosa. She has done this community great service. She has made us a stronger school district. She has made us a stronger community. I would be humbled and honored to make a fraction of the impact she has made in this community. As a Wauwatosa School Board member, I will advocate for student opportunities and choices, find the resources needed to put the best teachers in front of our students while being fiscally accountable to the Wauwatosa community at large. I welcome this opportunity, and I thank the board for their consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Gailey Colquhoun Mundy, please.
Heck of a name, isn't it? It's Gailey Colquhoun Mundy.
Colquhoun Mundy.
Colquhoun, the QU silent.
Okay, thank you.
And first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a retired Army officer and a retired American diplomat. I think I bring something unique in this, in that I've worked with schools all over the world. I've worked in schools in France, Germany, Austria, Spain, Portugal, Morocco, Chad, and Moldova. I've worked with American international schools as well as local orphanage schools in Chad, especially I've worked with a school for the deaf. I also taught classes in these different schools, which required me to learn languages, so I speak Arabic and Russian as well as English, French, Italian, Spanish, and Romanian. So I bring a world of experience back to my home. I've been a resident of Wauwatosa since 1968, with a few notable exceptions being that I traveled around the world and spent my time as an Army officer throughout the United States and Europe, and as an American diplomat working throughout the world. So I'd like to come back here. I came back here because this is my home. I've been on the Civic Celebration Commission for 6 years now. I've been in charge of the Memorial Day program for the last 4 years, as I am again this year. I've been a chief inspector at the polls, so I wanted to get back to being a volunteer in my home city, and being on the school board would be another opportunity, especially as a former teacher. I am right now pursuing my doctorate at the University of Wisconsin in women's studies, because I think women's studies is something that's a field that's wide open. It's the future, and I don't see myself as getting older. I see myself as getting more mature and having more experience.
Wonderful. Are you ready to begin the questions?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Question 1, how have your life experiences and skills prepared you for this responsibility?
Well, I think I sort of answered that with my first comment about myself, and that is that I've got a unique experience of seeing other countries' education systems, and I can tell you, in a lot of ways, European schools have our school systems beat, and that is because they encourage different languages. It's mandatory to speak English as a secondary language in most of the schools where I was stationed throughout the world. For example, in Moldova, they speak Russian, Romanian, French, and English. And they speak these languages by age 7. They're fluent in 4 languages. Whereas in an American school system, we're lucky if we have bilingual students. So I'd like to see more emphasis placed on languages because the world is constantly becoming smaller, as I found through my travels. So I think I bring that perspective. That and being an Army officer, I am very orderly, very organized, very by the book. I don't think that the rules are made to be broken. I think they're there to be followed. And I think that we need to set the rules so that people understand and can comprehend and can follow the things with intelligence and yet with discipline that's necessary.
Thank you. Question 2, what is the difference between the board's role in governance and the superintendent's role in managing operations?
Well, I think the young lady that I followed, I think she did a pretty good job of explaining that because those are exactly the things that I was looking at, talking about, that the school board basically sets a lot of the rules and the superintendent is the one who enforces them. So just seeing the school board as an advisory council in a lot of ways, but also the ones that makes decisions, hiring and firing. I notice in the minutes that there's some non-contract renewals as well as new contracts being let. So I see that's part of this board's responsibility. I'm more familiar with New Jersey's school board because that's the one I worked with most closely, most recently, before I moved here. So I'm going back to talking 10 years ago. I moved here in 2001, right before the World Trade Center was hit. I had just left New York City. I had been a resident of New Jersey and I had been working in New York City. So I'd left there 2 weeks before the planes imploded in the World Trade Center, where I used to go every morning for breakfast. So I feel it was fortunate that I came home when I did.
Thank you. Question 3, of all of the things the Wauwatosa School District is responsible for, what are the 3 most important to you?
Well, to me, the 3 most important, first of all, are preparing the child for the future. And if that means they want to be a mechanic, I think that's fine. Prepare them to be a mechanic. They want to be an IT person. Prepare them to be an IT person. They want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a physicist. Prepare them. But also teach the entire child. When I was a teacher, I taught English, high school English when I was a teacher. And one of the things I taught was contemporary literature. I had my students read a book called Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. I didn't do it just to have them read a book that I thought was sort of fluff. It taught them about dealing with people with disability. The main character, if you ever saw the movie Charlie, that's what the book Flowers for Algernon, that movie is based on that book. And I believe in teaching the entire student. So I think that we have to remember that we need lunches for those who can't afford them. We need to provide for the entire student body, not just the mind, but the body. And secondly, I think we have to be fiscally responsible, as the other young ladies just mentioned. It takes money to have a good education system. I'd like to see us get the most bang for the buck that we can. And that means squeeze every penny out of the budget that you can, but don't make the school system suffer. And thirdly, I'd like to see a real program about anti-bullying. I have firsthand knowledge of that because a little girl in my neighborhood was a student at the Wauwatosa Public Schools. She was bullied so badly that her parents transferred her to Our Redeemer Lutheran School, where she again was bullied. But the difference is Our Redeemer School suspended the 2 students who bullied her, and she's doing fine now. She's a straight A student. I hate to see that happen, that somebody leaves a public school to go to a private school because of something as simple as bullying. That's a problem that should not be happening anywhere, because if it's because of sexual orientation, it's because of your race, it's your creed, your color, whatever the problem is, there's no cause for it, there's no excuse for it. And I'd like to see this school system be one of the leading ones in the country for anti-bullying.
Thank you. What is the board's role in achieving the school district's mission?
Well, I think the mission is that we set a lot of the policy, the school board does. I say we because I've been on other school boards in the past. And we would help with the guidance of the superintendent and the direction of the superintendent, who would very often tell us, as I'm sure Dr. Ertl would tell us, what he needs the most and what he would like to see us do first. As a member of the board, that's what I would do. I would follow the direction that he gave us, but always remembering that we are the governing body. We're the advising body, but we're also the governing body.
Thank you. And the final question, what should be the relationship of the school board with the local community?
Well, I'd like to see the school board at the local community be a sounding board, that someone can call me at home with an issue, and then I'll be able to address it with the other board members. For example, the bullying. If that mother had called me at home, I would certainly have taken it up with Dr. Ertl and with the principal of the school and the teacher, and I would have taken action as a member of the board. I would have wanted to see this problem corrected, nipped in the bud before it became as bad as it was, because that is a severe problem. Hope I didn't talk too fast, but I wanted to get the time, and I was a little bit nervous about the time.
It was fine.
You're doing great. 8 minutes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I got a little nervous when you said 11 minutes before to the other young lady.
I didn't know
thought,
how
oh
to
my
do
God.
it, so I better say something when we talk.
Well, I'd like to say in closing then, if this is the last one, is that the last question? That
Yes.
I would love to be on the board because I do believe with Wauwatosa, of all the places in the world I've lived, the fact that I would choose to come back here. I've owned homes in New Orleans, in Virginia, in New Jersey, and yet this is the one where I choose to put down my roots again because I think this is the Midwest values. If you get into an elevator in New York City, I can guarantee you the first person to talk to you is going to be from Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, a Midwest state. They're going to be the first person to talk to you. I have yet to get in an elevator in New York City where the person that I'm talking to is not another Midwesterner. The New Yorkers are not quite as friendly as we are. But when I lived in New Jersey, they joked about it. They said we have such flat vowel sounds and all that. Well, I said, yes, but if you notice, newscasters sound like Midwesterners. So I'm proud and happy to be back in the Midwest, back in my home, back to where I belong, where my roots are. I have a daughter who's a Wauwatosa West High School graduate, and she's a Rutgers graduate, and she owns a home in Wauwatosa. And in 2 months, I'm going to be a grandmother to a little boy. So I will have a grandson who will be going to the Wauwatosa school system. So I have a vested interest in the future of this school system because I not only have a daughter who's a product of it, but I have a grandson who's going to be a product of it. So I'd like to see it be the very best school system it can be. And if I can do anything in my any small measure that I can do to help it be better, then that's what I would like to do. And I would also like to say that I had the fortune to meet Ms. Weber on a couple of occasions, and those are tough shoes to fill. I have to tell you, those are big boots to fill. That woman was an incredible lady and had a lot to do with the success of this board, I think. So I agree with the other lady that this is something we can aspire to be as good as that lady was. And that's what I would aspire to be. I would aspire to be the best I can be and the best I could be to represent my city, my county, my state. Thank you.
Thank
Oh, and
you.
in case you're wondering, I have Agent Orange, and my legs move. I have peripheral neuropathy. So in case you're wondering, my legs move. I can't help it. It's because of the Agent Orange. The legs, I have involuntary leg movements. So in case you're wondering why my legs are moving, and my hands, because of the wonderful gift that keeps on giving of Agent Orange, that all we Vietnam vets get to have and take with us to our grave. So that's why my legs are moving. So, thought I'd explain that away for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have Tyra Hildebrand. Come.
Hi. It's Tira, actually.
Tira.
So
Excuse me.
it's difficult. Don't worry, it's not the first time. I'm Tira Hildebrand, and I've lived in the district for over 14 years. I have 2 children at Washington Elementary, a 2nd grader and a 5th grader. I'm not a Wisconsin native. However, I have become a Packer fan in my time here. I grew up in California, and I have lived in Connecticut, in Chicago, in Boston, and in Minneapolis. And I'm happy to call Wauwatosa home, and very proud that I'm a resident here and that we chose to educate our children in the district. So, my entire professional career has been focused on ensuring a quality and equitable education for all students, which speaks to my commitment to the importance of a thoughtful public school education. I have familiarity with the educational landscape, which I believe will prove to be a significant asset to the board. That's it. I'm ready to go.
Thank you. All right, question 1 for you is how have your life experiences and skills prepared you for this responsibility?
The The different positions I've held in the field, I believe, provide me with an advantage of having multiple perspectives, which I believe is very important for a board member. I have worked as an urban middle school social studies teacher for 6 years, and I understand the variety of needs of successful teachers. They need strong administrative support, excellent curricular materials, structured school-wide management systems, time to collaborate and plan with colleagues, and support for differentiating the curriculum and thoughtful professional development. Having worked as a school administrator in Milwaukee for 2 years, I'm very aware of the variety of tasks that administrators face in terms of creating a positive school climate, working within a budget, conducting teacher evaluations and staff development, hiring and terminating staff, creating ways to encourage family involvement, resolving conflict, and establishing procedures to run a safe and successful school with high expectations for all students and staff. In my current work as a teacher educator, I have developed program assessments, I've initiated program changes based on student feedback, I'm familiar with the Common Core standards, with developing assessments that map back to measurable objectives, I have strong knowledge of DPI requirements, and I'm well aware of the challenges and benefits of technology use in the classroom. And in my work with pre-service educators at Marquette, instilling the notion that they not only have to have high expectations for all students, but they need to meet students where they are, and they're not all at the same place. They also must respect and appreciate the diversity of experiences and backgrounds that students have. My educational experience has also provided me with significant content knowledge, which I believe is very applicable to this board position. I hold a master's degree in education from Harvard, which focused on administration, planning, and social policy. In addition, I'm currently wrapping up my doctoral coursework in ed policy and leadership at Marquette. This has allowed me to research 3 core interest areas: teacher retention, developing culturally competent teachers, and mentoring for new teachers, all areas that I believe are very relevant to our district. Besides my educational background and my work experience, my volunteer work in the district demonstrates my passion for educational quality. I have served on the district's curriculum council for 5 years and have appreciated the opportunity to be part of the conversations regarding curriculum improvement and curriculum priorities. I have taught junior achievement in our district, and most recently I was part of a team that launched a very successful science fair at my children's school. The skills I've accrued throughout my career have prepared me well for a board position. First and foremost, I work well with others. I listen thoughtfully, I respect diversity of opinion, I am open and honest, I appreciate constructive feedback. Most importantly, I'm experienced in seeking ways to improve educational programming.
Thank you. What is the difference between the board's role in governance and the superintendent's role in managing operations?
The school board deliberates and establishes policy, while the superintendent decides how to implement the policy. The school board trusts the superintendent to do that. I believe that the board and the superintendent would work together in discussing the need for new policy or the need to amend current policy. I believe clear expectations are critical so the superintendent can move forward with confidence. I believe open and regular communication between the board and the superintendent is imperative so that both sides are updated on the progress of different initiatives in different situations. With clear expectations and honest communication between both entities, I would hope a level of trust is established which allows for respecting opinions, maintaining focus on district goals, and ultimately continuing to move the school district forward in a transparent fashion.
Thank you. Question 3, of all the things the school district, Wauwatosa School District is responsible for, what are the 3 most important to you?
This is a very difficult question to narrow down, but I have, okay. Continuing and increasing the academic excellence of our district, as well as attending to the social and emotional growth of our students, is of vital importance to me. The most recent data points from the WSAS Fall 2012 assessments showed an overall 66% scoring proficient or advanced in math and 52% in reading. We need to increase this percentage. In addition, I'm concerned about our achievement gap in our district, that our economically disadvantaged students, our students with disabilities, and African American students are not performing as well as our white students. While achievement data for our students is very important, it is but one slice of how our students are performing. Soliciting and evaluating student feedback on their educational experience in Wauwatosa is important. Successful teachers do this on a regular basis in their courses. I believe some element of student voice should be a component of a district's assessment. Including measures showing levels of student satisfaction with their educational experience is critical to improvement. We need to ensure our school district is continuing to address the social and emotional growth of our students. I was fortunate to attend the school district showing of the film Race to Nowhere, which illustrates how we need to consider the growth of the individual as a whole and not just the academic achievement side of students. Another passion I have is ensuring we have a safe, positive, and inclusive learning community. I appreciate and value the diversity in our community, and we need to be sure our district is meeting all of our students' needs. I want every single student in our schools to feel like an important and valued member of the school community. I cannot stress that enough. We need to have all families feel like they are part of our schools as well. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. Breaking down stereotypes and taking time to think about different ways the district can work toward inclusivity is important to me. I applaud the efforts of the board in recently establishing a subcommittee on school safety. I also appreciate the focus on educating students about bullying and reporting bullying. Fiscal responsibility is always an important board expectation and one that I hold as well. Act 10 has forced schools in Wisconsin to work with less funding. Carefully deciding how to allocate resources is critical to ensuring we can continue to provide the strong educational experience which is currently offered. In addition, solid fiscal management will allow us to provide competitive teacher salaries in order to retain our teachers. A school district is only as strong as its teachers.
Thank you. What is the board's role in achieving the school district's mission?
I see all members of the school community as responsible for achieving the mission. However, I view the board as an integral part of that. The board sets policy that supports the mission and allows the mission to come to fruition. In addition, the board sets goals to support the mission, and I see the board as monitoring and assessing those the progress of the goals and communicating openly about the action steps that they are taking towards the progress toward the goals.
Thank you. And the final question is, what should be the relationship of the school board with the local community?
I see the school board as needing to be open, transparent, and receptive to the public. I believe that board members should be receptive to feedback and respectful of parent and community member opinions. I would follow district protocol that all criticism, complaints, and suggestions are referred to the superintendent. My own communication with members of the board as a parent, I appreciated feeling that I could relay concerns to a board member, and I felt confident that those concerns were shared with the appropriate people. In communication with community members, the board member would need to obviously thank the person for sharing and taking the time to do that. I think that's a big step for someone to share their concerns, but we can only be as strong as if we don't know there's an issue, then it's hard to fix something that's a problem. I believe that board members need to keep in mind that there are policies to follow, that a single board member's response does not reflect the views of the board as a whole, and obviously the board president is the official spokesperson for the board. I appreciate the community staff survey on school board operations that is going to be discussed tonight. I believe that is an excellent tool for figuring out how effective a school board can be. And that's all I have. So I can close if you guys are ready.
Easy, you got
Okay,
5
all right.
minutes to close.
I believe my professional and educational background demonstrate my ability to understand a variety of educational issues from different viewpoints, and I also believe my volunteer experience shows my commitment to the students in the district. I'm confident that I can carry out the school district mission and board member obligations in an exemplary manner. Thank you for considering my application.
Thank you very much. Michael Hoyting, please.
let me just start by saying I don't envy any member of this board having to choose among the people I've heard already, let alone the people to come, maybe myself excluded. But it reinforces a decision I made 13 years ago when my wife and I graduated graduate school. She's a physician assistant, and I graduated law school. She's from Michigan, and I'm from Iowa, and we had a choice to make. And we, for sentiments already expressed, wanted to get back to the Midwest, and frankly looked all over the map. We chose the Milwaukee metro area and Wauwatosa for a reason. To date, I've yet to be disappointed with that choice. I've spent the better part of the last 10 years now recruiting law students from all over the country to come to this Milwaukee metro area, and specifically to Wauwatosa, if they will, using the public school system in this city as the primary recruiting tool to do that for my law firm. I dare say, in all the cities I've looked at, in all the metro areas, you cannot replicate what you have here in terms of location to all parts of the metro area, yet with the ability to send your children to public schools, know they're safe, and know they're going to get a quality education while they're here. And I say that residing in what's known as the quote-unquote Christ King neighborhood. I was told when I came here I may be one of the oddballs that sent my kids to public schools, but we were intent on moving somewhere where we could do that. In addition to recruiting students from across the country to this area, using the public schools as a resource and a selling point, I've spent the better part of the last 3 or 4 years working with children throughout the city of Wauwatosa. If you read my letter, you may wonder if I do anything but baseball. Let me assure you of my commitment. I walked off of the third base coaching role at about 6:45, went and changed and came in here, and I'm missing the Planning Commission meeting tonight where they're discussing the project that you passed, which I attended before. But the reality is, if you read what I wrote about my experiences working with children in this community, they're not baseball experiences. They're opening opportunity experiences. And what I've learned is the quality of people you've seen up here asking for this position matches the quality of the people out in the community. And frankly, I've committed myself to opening opportunities because every time we've done that, our kids have busted through them and are looking for more. I would like to take that to a new level now and go beyond baseball. This board is the ultimate opportunity to do that. I'm public school educated. Father-in-law is a public school teacher. My mother is a public school teacher. I feel very strongly about the public schools in this community. In fact, I view the public schools here as the greatest asset this community has. With that, I think the development of my professional career, some of the more nuts and bolts, working with budgets, committee work I've done both in the law firm while I was in college, outside in the legal community, understanding how to have debates and discussions, how to disagree without being disagreeable, how to bring the different viewpoints down to a common denominator that's usually better than when we started. That does not mean we agree all the time. You need people on a board that understand how to do that, how to understand how to bring out opinions from people, learn from them, and then put those into action in some sort of consensus that can be forged, rather than simply sitting up on a board and enforcing one's own opinion on everyone else. Lastly, I find in my experiences I've been told I'm very good at listening. My father always told me I have one mouth and 2 ears for a reason. And I think perhaps the best asset of any board member or committee member in any capacity is to know when to listen and when to talk. And quite often listening is the better way to go. That's my opening statement. I welcome the questions.
Thank you. Question 1 then. How have your life experiences and skills prepared you for this responsibility?
Surely. I put a lot of this in my letter, but let me just say, first of all, it starts with being public school educated, and then using the public school reputation here and opportunities here to locate in the community. I have a strong commitment to the public schools in this community. Secondly, I think the professional development I've done while living here, never like to apply to any job advertising that you're a lawyer, but there are skills that I've been able to develop in that capacity over the last 13, 14 years. I've talked about some of them. The ability to advocate and debate and learn from each other. I always tell people I'm an expert in learning about what other people are experts in when I service my clients. They come to me from all different industries. And I think those experiences as a lawyer, frankly, have given me an eye towards budgets, which I have to do every day, trade-offs, which I have to look at every day, but also the ability to defer to people at my clients often businesses, when they're making tough decisions like personnel decisions. When I do a lot of labor and employment law. And when a client comes to us and says, I want to remove somebody or I want to promote somebody, we do a legal analysis on it, but part of the analysis we have to do is trying to understand why the client is coming from that position. I think I'm uniquely qualified to sit on this board and assist in the evaluation of personnel decisions, which I do view as, if not the most important role that this board has, at least in the top two.
Thank you. What is the difference between the board's role in governance and the superintendent's role in managing operations?
We'll just cite back to my grandfather for this one. He served on the West Sioux Community School Board in Hayward, in Iowa, for a long time. Remains one of the most respected board members that was there, long since retired. We had a big issue with the superintendent my senior year of high school, and my grandfather got involved in it, and I remember him reiterating to me that the school board has two main tasks. Number one, we set policy. Number two, this is him speaking for the school board. Number two, as a school board member, you hold the administration accountable for the implementation of that policy. The gargantuan step in between is the implementation of the policy, which is not the province of the school board. When I talked about personnel decisions, that's what I meant. You hire people who are qualified to make those decisions, and you give them the flexibility to make those decisions. The trade-off is to hold them accountable at the end of the day, not only for the implementation of the policy successfully, but within a budgetary framework that's efficient, that serves the taxpayers of the community who fund these schools.
Thank you. Of all of the things the Wauwatosa School District is responsible for, what are the three most important to you?
Number one to me, I'm going to lump together facilities and equipment. Okay? As I recruit people from around the country and have talked to them, the technological gaps that can exist in some public school systems are big, and it's almost the first question I get. Well, your kids go to public schools. Is it the brick and mortar 1950s model that they're learning off of chalkboards? Or are you offering the type of advancement that many of the people I'm talking to see in their jobs or other careers? So that's number one. Number two, the mission of the school is to educate our students with an eye towards the taxpayers of this community. It's very important to me in terms of a budgeting process that we're looking for ways to do things efficiently. That doesn't mean pinch every penny. It does mean assess every dollar spent and make sure the money is going where it needs to be. Number three, atmospheric. There's a big world out there after these kids graduate from high school. I've seen some of it, certainly not all of it. The kids need the nuts and bolts education, but we also need to educate them on how to interact with people. I'll call it a life education. I think Tira Hildebrand up before me hinted at this. It's the ability to deal with people that disagree with you, the ability to overcome obstacles and handle adversity, and frankly, the ability to manage time when time doesn't want to be managed. All these real-life lessons that we don't necessarily get out of textbooks, I believe we need to be preaching throughout the careers of these students. My athletic emphasis, both in high school and college and now working with kids in the community, does exactly that. Nowhere in my letter will you see a one-loss record, because frankly that's not what we get out of it. But if we can open opportunities for the kids and then teach them, if you struck out twice at the plate, you have a third time up, we're going to overcome that obstacle and we're going to learn from it. That to me is a life lesson. And I believe the schools have an indispensable and undelegable role in training those kids not only to graduate academically, but to be ready for the workforce that's waiting for them.
Thank you. What is the board's role in achieving the school district's mission?
I'll keep that one short. Number one, hiring good personnel. It's at the core of everything. Because number two, I believe the board's role is to set policy, good, forward-thinking, 21st century policy that will be demanded by the rest of the community. If you take what I have said about those two things, or what I said about the board's role, then the hiring of personnel, number one, becomes incredibly important because you're trusting those people to implement the policy. And then number three, I will say the holding to results. This is not a pure delegation to administration. Mark Twain said it's patriotic to support your country all the time and your government when it deserves it. I suppose for the school board, it's the same thing. You support your school district all the time and the administration when they deserve it. At the end of the day, we answer to the taxpayers of this community and the parents of this community to make sure their children are receiving efficient, good educations. So the last thing I'll put on there is holding accountable, and that includes budgeting.
Thank you. What should be the relationship of the school board with the local community?
School board should be a part of the community and developing an asset for the community. I'll go back again to recruiting students from across the country. The public schools in this community are, to me, the greatest asset this community has. And the fact that it can offer such a great public education with the good parochial schools that are already in the community. We need to not only be a part of the community, we need to communicate with the community, be pulling in the same direction as to the rest of the community. And I saw this break down, frankly, at the last Plan Commission meeting with the Breedlove Field project. And it wasn't a good experience for any of us. There are lessons to be learned from that. I think there are a lot of things we can do to communicate to the community better and to force the community to communicate to us better. But the short answer to the question is the role of this school board is to ensure that the public schools are an asset to this community and drawing people to the community here that you want in the community. I don't know how much time I have left.
10 minutes and 40 seconds.
Oh, okay.
You're doing great.
Let me just say, maybe the best asset I'll bring to the school board, if I can head into my close here, is the ability to listen. I presume those of you who have served on this board feel like you're better at it now than you were day one when you sat in that chair. Given that, I think there's a lot of knowledge and information that anybody who assumes Mrs. Weber's position needs to get from you. If you put me on this board, you'll find me, I believe, to be an incredibly good listener. I may annoy you with questions, but I believe the first role of any board member, and I saw this in the bylaws, your duty is to train whoever sits in that chair. Our duty is to accept that training, whoever we put up there. I'm not going to come onto this board pretending I have all the answers. I'm not going to sit here and say that if you put me on this board 2 years from now, our school districts are going to be astronomically better than they are now because I sit there. But what I will promise you is if you put me on the board, I will be a hardworking, listening member of this committee. I've also seen some of the presentations that have come before the committee and some of the questioning that happens. In my profession, for better or for worse, one of the things I have gotten very good at is analyzing information and asking critical questions of people. Whether it's a cross-examination at trial, whether it's a deposition I'm taking, whether it's 24 law students at Georgetown that I'm interviewing for a position at our firm. I think any board member needs the ability to be critical of anything that comes up to this table for a presentation, and that includes proposals by the administration, proposals by third parties. I happened to be at one, I believe, for a charter school initiative or an online initiative a few board meetings ago, and I appreciated the fact that the board took the time not to just accept at face value what was coming, but ask the hard questions. I'll just end, I guess, where I began. I've spent the last few years working with kids in this community. I cited one example that's a somewhat baseball example in my letter, which was founding this, we'll call it a B team, for fifth grade kids to play baseball this year. I cite that because that's the most meaningful to me. I was approached by a group of parents after we had already selected teams in 2 different programs, with their children asking for an opportunity to participate in some way, shape, or form, but understanding that their child really didn't have the chance to play. Rest assured, I had enough on my plate between my job, my kids, my home reconstruction, and what I'm already coaching that we did not need to go that route. There were questions raised to me about whether we could generate the interest in this community to even fill a roster of 11. I decided that every time we've opened opportunities in these programs for children or in this community, the families have stepped up and helped out. Well, right now we have a team of 14, and 14 kids who 2 of whom had given up baseball altogether, who are now going to have the opportunity to play and participate, and maybe even more, form a mini community with the other families on that team. And I will tell you, more so than our other teams, that B team represents a diversity of school districts, of races, of opinions, of economics that our other teams don't. That's a philosophy I'm going to bring to the school board. We're here to open opportunities for this community, and thank goodness we have a community that's willing to embrace it, and essentially, to use a baseball analogy, knock those opportunities out of the park.
14 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Carmela Rios, please.
Now everyone's answers are in my head, so I'll try to separate. All right, so hello, I'm Carmela Rios. I am a Lincoln parent of a first grader and future kindergartner. About 11 years ago, my husband and I decided to put our roots down in Wauwatosa because of the diverse experiences and rich education that the district had to offer. Now that my children are of school age, I would like to contribute the skills I have gained through my career in public education to help continue the excellence that the school district has delivered. And that's my intro.
Thank you. Then let's begin with the questions. Question 1, how have your life experiences and skills prepared you for this responsibility?
Okay, so I was a high school science teacher for 10 years, and there I really saw how policy that the board sets directly impacts the classroom that our children reside in. I started my teaching career at an inner Milwaukee school where I worked with a largely minority and Hispanic, African American and Hispanic population, and I did that because of choice, because I'm bilingual and I wanted to really help those students. I worked there for 4 years, and then I switched to Greendale School District, which is a Milwaukee County school district, smaller than Wauwatosa, but it does very well. And there I was hired to teach AP biology, and I intentionally always also taught the lower biology course, which was for the more struggling students. And it had a higher proportion of special ed students because I really felt that, the teachers that are good should not be only teaching the high-level courses, that they should also be teaching the courses with more struggling students. There at Greendale, after working there for 3 years, I was asked to be science curriculum facilitator for both the middle school and the high school. And there I got administrative responsibilities, and I saw a different light in education. I had responsibilities that included curriculum review and implementation of a very novel curriculum based on lab and data-driven core science courses. And in order to do that, I had to be responsible for the training of experienced and young teachers. I was responsible for delivering all professional development during delayed starts and release days and summer. I also was responsible in being an integral part in hiring of science teachers and placement of students from middle school to high school and scheduling what teachers teach what. During this time, I also found how it was to really have to make hard decisions. I observed teachers, and there were a few instances where I felt the teachers were not meeting expectations, and I had to go to administration to make the case for non-renewals. And that was something that didn't make me popular, but I always had student achievement as my priority, and if you hold true to that, that gets you through the rough decisions. Okay, from there, I'm now at Marquette University, where I see what's expected of our students once they graduate high school, and that gives me another perspective. There, I'm actively conducting research towards my PhD in molecular biology, and I'm helping teach the undergraduate biology courses. In addition, I've spent the greater part of this past year running a campaign for a school board seat because of not an agenda or not a purpose, but just because I feel I have skills to contribute.
Thank you. What is the difference between the board's role in governance and the superintendent's role in managing operations?
Sure. So I feel, as many people have already said, that really the school board sets policy to allow for effective change to occur. The school board doesn't micromanage or doesn't set policy based on a specific agenda. The school board is responsible for long-term goals and planning that reflect the mission of the district, and the school board is also responsible for setting the culture of the district. On the other hand, the superintendent is the educational leader of the district, and they're more responsible with engaging and working regularly with the administrators in the different buildings, the staff in the different buildings, and making sure that the culture that is set is being relayed down to the buildings, and that the climate in the building also reflects the culture. They're responsible for the everyday workings of the building and the district.
Thank you. Of all of the things the Wauwatosa School District is responsible for, what are the 3 that are most important to you?
Okay, so this is a tough question, and I thought about it, probably one of the questions I thought of the most. And my first answer, number 1, is one that seems obvious, but I think it's actually tricky. It's public education is really equity in education. It's the idea that all students, no matter what their background is, no matter where they are going to have access, equal access to top quality education. And one example where this can become tricky is something that I was dealing with when I was at Greendale last year, and now I notice Wauwatosa dealt with the same initiative this year, and that's the bring your own device. Bring your own device is something that is being implemented, and it's a positive thing. But I recall last year when I was teaching, the discussion coming up, well, how is that translated if one student doesn't have a device to bring, right? And all of a sudden our curriculum switches to using these technologies regularly in the classroom. And we give them a laptop to use during school, but then they can't take it home with them. And that's one of the issues that comes up with equity. And we don't want there to be anything in public education where one student, because of their background or because of the income that their parents make, has a leg up over another student. And I think it's sometimes those policies, you really have to set them up so equity is there in educating all our students equally, because in society, that's leaving. There's not many places where you have equal opportunity, right? And so public education is one of those places, and that's why I feel so strongly about public education, and that's why we have to continue it. So that's my number one. My number two is engaging the community. I think that the superintendent where I worked used to always say that a community gets the schools that they demand. And if we engage our community and educate them on how the school board decides on policy, what different initiatives there are, they're going to have a vested interest, and that's going to promote student learning. And then the last one is administrative oversight. We want to make sure that our administrators are really holding true to the mission of the schools and what the community demands. So those are my three.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What is the board's role in achieving the school district's mission?
Yes, and this is, I feel like I'm going to be echoing what many people said, but really it's the school board's responsibility to set policy that reflects the mission, both current initiatives and then the long term. And a school district that really holds true to its mission can't be taken for granted. It needs to have daily nurturing of what is the mission, how are we really holding true to it.
Thank you. What should be the relationship of the school board with the local community?
Okay, and so this was one of my three that I think is the responsibility of the district as well, so I'm going to repeat a little bit, but I think it's the school board's responsibility to be proactive in engaging the community, because that will prompt student success. I feel that they're directly related, and how we can be proactive about it is provide opportunities to seek community input and to truly listen and to respond, and to not just have it be, a picture of the community saying something, but really take what they say to heart and be educating in terms of teaching the community what are the different initiatives taking place, and to listen. I think that if we do this, the community it will be a partnership, and they will have a vested interest in the success of the schools, and that will promote student learning.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was it.
Closing statement?
Oh, gosh, I talked fast. All right, so I just want to state that I'm not doing this for a specific agenda or a personal interest. I have spent, my career working in public schools, and I think they are extremely important, obviously. And so I always told myself when I was working tirelessly as a teacher and then as the curriculum facilitator, and I would have to go to all the school board meetings in Greendale, I said, well, when my kids are of school age, I'm going to work equally as hard in the district they're in. And so I said that to myself, and so this year, and when my son is now in first grade, and this was the first time he was in Tosa schools, I said, well, I'm going to hold true to that, and that's why I decided to run for the spring election. As I told Mr. Kroner, it was It wasn't, although it's probably, it wasn't a personal issue with anything he had done. I just chose to do it because that's what I told myself. And it was solely so I could contribute the skills and the leadership that I had gained to the Tosa schools. And that's really why I'm doing this. There's no other reason. I'm very happy to see that there's many people that are going for this position, because that says that the community's demanding a good school. And so I'm really happy about that. And
Thank you very much. At this time, we will have 5 minutes of reflection, silent reflection by the board. After that, we will proceed to vote. There is a statutory requirement that the vote of the board be not anonymous. Our officers' elections later will be anonymous. We will do this by paper ballot and signed. And when Dr. Ertl reads the votes, he will read the vote and the board member's name casting the vote. So at this time, we'll begin our 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm ready, baby. Oh, it's good. Yeah. What a group, huh? I'm impressed. Jeez. Yeah, I know. Jeez. interest.
With that, it's been 5 minutes. We will now cast ballots to explain the logic. The first round in which a candidate receives 4 votes, that candidate will be the winner. In other rounds, the top 2 vote getters will advance to the next round. For example, if we, on the first round, tie 3-3, those 2 vote getters will advance. If the vote is 3-2-1 for 3 candidates, the person receiving 3 votes and the person receiving 2 votes will advance. If on the first round we split 2-2-2, all 3 candidates will advance to the next round. If in the first round we split 3-1-1-1, then 5 candidates will advance to the next round. Does everyone understand?
I did it right until the last one.
Okay. Well,
3-1-1-1.
3-1-1-1, 6 votes have been cast.
Yeah.
4 people.
No one has 4, so there's no winner.
Right.
First place is the person
Never
getting
mind.
3 votes, but not 4, so that person
Yeah.
would not
I
win.
get it. I do get it. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
I
Second place
apologize.
is a 3-way tie. Everyone advances.
That's like,
Let's just see
okay,
how it goes.
5
Step for number
candidates
5.
and 6 votes.
And somebody thought this up. So, with that, and to remind us, we will write the candidate's last name on the round 1 vote and sign our names as board members. The board members' votes will be announced and the board member casting the vote will be announced as Dr. Earl reads them.
What if I can't read? Okay. Mr. Croner votes for Mr. Hoytink. Ms. Muehlfeld votes for Ms. Casey. Can't read the signatures. Mr. DeRose, is this your signature?
Yeah.
Mr. DeRose votes for Ms. Rios. Ms. Fee votes for Mr. Hoytink. Mr. Meyer votes for Ms. Rios, and Mr. Randall votes for Ms. Rios.
So we have 3 votes for Rios, 2 votes for Hoytink, and 1 vote for Casey. So Rios and Hoytink advance to the next round. Please fill out your ballots. Pass them to Dr. Earl.
Mrs. Fee votes for Mr. Hoytink. Mr. DeRose for Ms. Rios. Mr. Meyer for Ms. Rios. Mrs. Randall for Ms. Rios. Mrs. Muehlfeld for Ms. Rios. And Mr. Croner for Mr. Hoytink.
The vote is Rios 4, Hoytink 2. Carmela Rios is the winner. Congratulations, Mrs. Rios. Before you step up to take the oath of office, I would like to thank all of the five candidates. I truly believe that if these 6 board members left tonight and the 5 of you took our place, the school district would be in excellent hands. That may be a good idea, but but we can't do it. So I am pretty sure, by thinking that there will be seats opening in the future, please, we encourage you to continue your interest. The school district needs all of you. So with that, Mrs. Rios, please step to the front. And
Don't we have to make a motion?
oh, you're right. But she can step to the front while we make the
No,
motion.
she doesn't have to. If we can vote her
Okay,
in, then
we'll make the motion
then we'll
first.
start stepping.
Mrs. Randall, would you make the motion, please?
Yes. Okay. I move that Carmela Rios be appointed to the school board beginning May 13th, 2013, and ending April 2014. And I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Croner, thank you. Mrs. Galante, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. DeRose?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Vote carries 6-0.
As clerk of the Wauwatosa School Board, I, Thomas Jarose, will administer the oath of office to the newly appointed school board member. Would Carmela Rios please stand? Stand wherever you like.
She has to read you.
Mostly you gotta be vertical.
Who's behind there? She has to read.
No, I gotta give you.
Yeah.
Here, no. You can stand right there, right there. Put your right hand up. I say your name.
Carmela Rios,
No, I go. You can do it yourself.
who has been appointed to the Board of Education of the Wauwatosa School District, but have not yet entered upon the duties, therefore swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You can have a chair now.
Now you move in.
What?
Now you move
Sit
in.
down.
Yeah, you're in.
I can give you a pen. You need a pen?
Oh, yeah. That's really funny. Oh.
All right.
All right, now what do I do?
Pay attention.
We need an immediate contribution, so, all right. With that, we will move to our regular organizational meeting.
Sure.
Should we let you catch your breath? Okay. Okay, members of the Wauwatosa School Board value the input of students, parents, staff members, and community members. The board's regularly scheduled meetings provide an opportunity for opinions and concerns to be expressed publicly. The board values all comments and will respectfully consider this input in decision-making. The board requests that individuals limit their comment on each item to 3 minutes. Following any comment, an individual board member may respond on the issue raised. However, it is not the intent of the public comment portion of the agenda for the board to enter into a debate with members of the community. Because non-agenda items are not publicly posted in advance, no action will be taken on public comment regarding non-agenda items this evening. Is there anyone wishing to make comment on a non-agenda item? Seeing none, we will move to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda which board members would like to remove for separate discussion and action? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Mufeld. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Fee. Is there any board discussion on the consent agenda? Is there any community comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none, Mrs. Galante, please will you call the roll?
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. Giroux?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Passes 7-0. Recognitions, Mr. Croner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Students from Wauwatosa East and West High Schools took part in the American Association of Teachers of German, AATG, National German Examination in January. The exam is administered each year to high school students on the second, third, and fourth level of German language study for measurement, placement, and diagnostic purposes. East and West students were among approximately 23,000 German students participating nationwide. The following students scored in the 85th percentile or above. They are at West High School: Sabrina Black, Sam Frederick, Dana Kautzer, Alec Lau, Henry Morgan, Gina Richter, Melanie Smith, Kayla Tao, Sean Van Zeelen, and Lydia Werley. At East High School: Megan Armstrong, Madison Constantino, Sophie Dion Kirschner, Hannah Dion Kirschner, Annika Modler, Maria Paletta, Daniel Rabel, Cole Faltzgraf, and Sarah Spry. Winning silver certificates for achievement on the National German exam were at East: Logan Forbes, Kayla Klein, Molly Nellen, Rose Spice-Kopishki, and Mitchell Thomas. At West High School: Andrew Ave, Katya Dickey, Monica Meyer, Henry Morgan, Alex Seaback, and Kayla Tao. Bronze certificate winners were determined by their AATG results. East students receiving a bronze certificate were Dan Fee, Tristan Land, Leah Poltz, Celia Ripple, and Sarah Spry. West students receiving a bronze certificate were Ryan Rush, Brandon Toy, and Devin Zanskis. The German teachers are Karen Ave at West and Ava Tunstra at East.
Students from 4 Wauwatosa School District schools have been selected for the 2013 Young People's Art Exhibit sponsored by Golden Guernsey Dairy. The winning artwork will be on display in the lobby of the Wisconsin Exposition Center during the 2013 Wisconsin State Fair, August 1st through 11th. 2 Whitman students won awards. Richard Sear, 8th grade, won the poster award. Sear will receive a cash award and a ribbon, and his painting will be used for the 2014 Young People's Art Exhibit poster. Christopher Schickel, 7th grade, won first place for his oil pastel. Beatrice Leach, 8th grade, from Longfellow, took first place for her graphite drawing. Also from Longfellow, Elizabeth Larson, 7th grade, 3rd place. Wauwatosa West 11th grader Cheyenne Green won the Utrecht Art Award, which is awarded to one junior and senior student for a painted 2-dimensional piece. Other West 11th graders, Tiffany Pasensny, Patricia Bermima, and Colin Eck also won awards. Amanda Wing, East High School, was one of 13 students in Wisconsin to receive the Special Needs Artwork Award. East students receiving cash awards were Muriel Hansen, sophomore, Remy Ripple, senior, and Haley Rakowicki, senior.
For the past 2 years, Newsweek and the Daily Beast analyzed high schools across the nation to find those that have proven to be the most effective in preparing students for college. In 2013, the ranking highlights the best 2,000 public high schools in the nation. Wauwatosa East High School made the list for the 3rd time with a ranking of 1,065. And for the first time, Wauwatosa West High School also made the list with a ranking of 1,220. 6 components are used to determine rank: graduation rate, college acceptance rate, AP, IB, and AICE tests taken per student, average SAT, ACT scores, average AP, IB, AICE scores, and percent of students enrolled in at least one AP, IB, AICE course.
Thank you, Mrs. Randall. If I may comment on this last item, this is pretty spectacular. It says a lot about our students, our parents, our community that supports us, and our employees. So congratulations to all of you for the good work that you did. With that, we move to election of board officers in accordance with policy 0150. A copy is available here. The board elects its officers at the first meeting in May. Board members will nominate and elect officers by written ballot. To explain the process a little bit, and please, board members, correctly if I misstep on this explanation. This is a anonymous ballot. Don't use your seat 7 replacement ballots. We have a rule that there are no limitations with this ballot on who can sit in which seat. We have a 2-year successive limit on the president and the vice president. Neither have served for 2 years. So both are eligible for both seats. And the vote, as I said, is anonymous. We've removed the provision that drops out on a failure to receive votes. And I've just confused it a little bit because first we have a nomination round. In the nomination round, for each seat, anyone who receives a vote is now a candidate for the actual round, which is next. Once you are a candidate, you remain a candidate unless you withdraw. So there's no provision for candidates dropping out once they've received the nomination unless the candidate chooses to withdraw. Have I explained this correctly?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, we all understand. So Dr. Ertl will now run this election, and I shall sit silent.
The first is for nomination for president. I'll read them off as I open them. Mr. Meyer, Mr. Croner, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Meyer. Actually, I probably don't need to read. Mr. Croner, Mr. Meyer. So the next will be the vote for the president between Mr. Meyer and Mr. Croner. And the vote for president, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Croner, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Meyer, and Mr. Croner. So Mr. Meyer will be recommended for president with 5 votes. Now the nominations for vice president.
Mr. Meyer, just a point of order. I think according to our policy, we're not supposed to vote on nominations. They're just, the nomination round is not supposed to be a voting round. You're not supposed to count them at that point. I think if you were to receive 3 nominations for one person, you read that name once.
Okay. There hasn't been a decision in this regard in Wisconsin, but 3 other states have they've had state court rulings where with anonymous ballot, that, for example, if there are 7 members voting, there must be 7 ballots cast, even if one is an abstention. If there are only 6 ballots cast, then that round is void. So therefore, we have to account for all 7 ballots, if that law would be applicable to Wisconsin, and I'm going to presume it is. So
I'm talking about the nomination round.
yes, we still must account for all 7 ballots. Dr. Earl is required to see that there are 7 ballots. One of them may be an abstention, but he must account for 7 ballots. So if you wish, ruling from the chair here.
I don't think you understand my question, though.
I do understand your question.
I don't.
According to past practice, when we had multiple nominations, the name was only read once, and that's how we've operated in the past.
Mrs.
And
Fee,
that
please.
is the policy. I think that they can be accounted for without being read out loud, as long as Dr. Ertl makes sure and can attest that there are the 7 ballots. But the policy reads that for the nomination round, the name is only read once. That's what the policy reads.
Let's read the policy.
Let's.
I just want to be sure, so I see it. I'm inclined to rule that way anyway, but I want
Read it once. Can I
just.
Who cares?
Nomination. Each board member shall receive 1 ballot for the purpose of nominating an officer. The secretary will collect the ballots and identify the nominees. Election. It is silent as to whether the secretary shall, may, or shall not read the names. So it's my opinion as chair, I may rule anyway that I feel is proper. I'll rule for now, for this round, for this time, that, and perhaps we need to remove the ambiguity from our policy.
What is the
That,
ambiguity?
As to whether we shall, may, or shall not announce the count in the nomination round. So I will, it doesn't affect the output, but I will say that Dr. Ertl, please count the ballots. The ballots will be, or the nomination ballots, they will be available for public inspection afterwards. Tell us how many were cast, and tell us the names of nominees receiving nominations without providing the count. That is the chair's ruling. So where are we now? Please remind us where we are.
We are on nominations for vice president. Mrs. Muehlfeld is nominated. Mrs. Randall is nominated. Mrs. Fee is nominated. Three people nominated for vice president: Mrs. Fee, Mrs. Muehlfeld, and Mrs. Randall. Now the vote for vice president. Mrs. Fee, Mrs. Randall, Mrs. Fee, Mrs. Muehlfeld, Mrs. Muehlfeld, Mrs. Muehlfeld, Mrs. Muehlfeld. So with 4 votes, Mrs. Muehlfeld will be recommended for vice president. And now the nominations for treasurer. Nominated for treasurer, Mrs. Randall. Mr. Gerose. Mr. Croner. So the 3 people nominated for treasurer, Mr. Gerose, Mr. Croner, and Mrs. Randall.
And how many ballots were cast?
7 ballots.
Thank you.
This is the vote for treasurer. Mrs. Randall, Mr. Gerose, Mr. Croner, Mr. Gerose, Mr. Croner, Mr. Gerose, Mrs. Randall. Mr. Gerose has 3 votes, Mr. Croner 2, Mrs. Randall 2. We will go to the next round for the vote for treasurer. Second vote for treasurer, Mr. Croner, Mr. Gerose, Mr. Gerose, Mr. Gerose, Mr. Croner, Mr. Gerose, Mr. Gerose. So Mr. Gerose would be recommended for treasurer with 5 votes. Next is nomination for clerk. Oh, you got an extra one.
Yeah.
Nominated for clerk, Mrs. Randall. Mr. Rios. Mrs. Fee. So nominated for clerk, Mrs. Fee, Mrs. Randall, Mrs. Rios.
And how many nominations? were
7
cast? Thank you.
were cast. That's the appropriate word for nominations.
Working short one.
Consistent, nothing else but consistent.
Try to have some.
I'm starting to get worried down there.
And the vote for clerk, Mrs. Fee, Mrs. Randall, Mrs. Randall, Mrs. Randall, Mrs. Randall, Mrs. Rios, Mrs. Fee. Mrs. Randall will be the recommended school board member for clerk. 4 votes. 7 votes were cast.
Mixed up my pages here. There we go. Mrs. Rios, let's get you in this action. Can you read the nomination, please? With the assistance from Mr. Giroux.
Okay. It is recommended that the following persons be elected officers of the Wauwatosa School Board in accordance with policy number 0150 for a term beginning tonight and ending in May 2014.
And please read the
President-
names.
Yep. President Mike Meyer. Vice President Sharon Mufeld. Treasurer Tom Giroux, and Clerk Mary Jo Randall.
Is there s-
And I so move. Oh,
Number 2.
oh. Appointment of Secretary of the Board.
Yeah, read that.
It is recommended that the superintendent be appointed to act as secretary to the board.
Now you so move.
And I so move.
Second.
Mr. Giroux seconded. Thank you. Is there discussion? Community comment? Mrs. Galante, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. Giroux?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Randall, please will you read the student learning motion?
Sorry. Thank you. Sorry. It is recommended that the school board approve the attached lists of prospective graduates from East and West High Schools with the understanding that students will complete all high school graduation requirements, and I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Neufeld. Is there any board comment? Other than congratulations?
Yeah.
It's such a happy day when they graduate. Is there any community comment? Seeing none, Mrs. Galante, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. Gerose?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Motion carries 7-0. Student services, did I miss something? I move like I'm missing something. It's been known to happen. Mr. Gerose, please will you read the motion?
It is recommended that the school board approve the contract for the 2013-14 school year between CISA number 1 and the District for Services and Personal totaling $166,848.75, and I so move.
Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mrs. Randall and Mr. Gerose. Mrs. Muehlfeld,
Yes.
would you wish to comment at all on, briefly?
Well, only that I'd like to defer to Ms. Kwiatkowski or the superintendent to talk a little bit more about some of the programs that we have through CISA number 1.
Sure. We primarily use CISA number 1 for some of their alternative school services. If you look at the contract, we have several seats. CISA's been great to work with. They're very flexible. If there has been a need where we've needed to add seats during the school year, they've accommodated that request for us. The other services that we use through CISA number 1 are those services for those low incidence, high needs kids, services for visually impaired children, hearing impaired children. And then we also maintain a contract for an autism consultant. We do have a full-time diagnostician, autism program support teacher in our district who networks a lot. We use CISA to network because that is such a specialized skill. But we like the use of the consultant to support our teachers as they are learning how to implement different kinds of curriculum that are specific for students with autism. They're very complex curriculums, and that external coach and expertise has always been really helpful. So that's the contract.
Well, thank you very much. Is there any community comment? Is there any other board comment? I'm sorry, I didn't ask the board if there's other comment. Seeing none. Mrs. Galante, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fee?
Yes.
Mr. Gerose?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes. Okay, superintendent's report to the board. There's the proposal for the self-evaluation survey to include a school board self-assessment questionnaire, and as well as a community staff survey of board operation. And for this, I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Muehlfeld.
Okay, thank you. I've asked the board if I can join Ms. Wainscott at the table in front of you for the presentation.
You certainly may.
Okay. And I have handouts if you would want to pass them down. Of just the slide.
Other one.
The handout I've given you is just a all of you have received the work of the assessment survey tools that I had the pleasure of working with. Sure.
It's a little dry.
Okay, talking to the microphone, thanks. So this is a different view for me, so thank you for allowing me to do that. I had the great pleasure of working with Dr. Ertl, Ms. Wainscott. I know that Ms. Galante also worked on the tool. Just kind of an opening comment for you is this process is consistent with our school board policy. It's also consistent with our school district philosophy of continuous improvement for not only our administrative staff, but our education staff, and all of us that work in the district. In addition, it is part of our long-range plan goals, and so it was very nice to work with the administration on this project. So what I have for you today to look at is a tool that primarily was developed by using the National School Board Association survey model. It is a school board specific assessment tool. It does a ranking of just 4 areas to each question. It seems as though it will take a long time to fill out, but we estimate it'll probably be about 15 minutes by the time you get through it. It should give us a good starting benchmark for a discussion of how are we doing, how are we working together. And I always find myself that doing surveys is a little bit of a humbling process. So in addition to that, we also wanted to present to you tonight about 25 questions that we'd like to also send out to the community and staff on how are we doing for board operations. A lot of the questions mirror the questions that you see in the board assessment, so we can do some comparisons and gauge how we're doing. Plus, we've left in a free-form comment section for the community and the staff, which could also give us some good feedback. And now I guess I'll direct some questions maybe to Ms. Wainscott or Dr. Ertl for how they actually created this tool so that we as a district could summarize the information so it makes sense for us to use and work with later on.
Laura actually survey and put it online so it can be done online. I think that's obviously the best way to collect that input. Just my thought on this whole process is, as a board, we've had several attempts to do self-evaluations. I think this is trying to change the conversation a little bit to one more of complete board operations, look at perceptions of community and staff of how the board operates in comparison to how the board feels that it operates, and I think that can be a much more productive conversation than some of the ones we've started in the past but really haven't brought to fruition. So it's an attempt to do something a little bit different to facilitate that self-evaluation process, which I think is important to do, similar to an evaluation of me once a year, to have the board do a self-evaluation. And I think this is a good model to do that.
I'll just add about the community staff survey. Going through the long-range plan, the board and being transparent and working on their communication skills, behavior and spirit of cooperation. It was mentioned several times in internal communications, community unity, trust, and transparency sections, that the board do some kind of analysis and communication with the people in the public and the staff as well. It was one of the things that was an action step, and so if you decide to go through with this, this would be something that was part of the original long-range plan.
On to then the proposed timeline. If the board would like to go in this direction, we'd like to get started right away. It would let us begin in June, which is nice timing for us if we could do this before the June meeting of the board, and then have the survey results and next steps available for us at our normal in-service time. It also coincides with the superintendent evaluation as we discuss shared leadership. So I think the timing can be good for us if we are able to begin in June. So with that, I will open it up for questions and comments.
Mrs. Randall?
This may be for Laura, but how are you going to make the community aware of this?
Well, we have media here. And we also have staff would get it through email, so that's an easy one. We can put it on our website, we can put it on Facebook, and that's probably the best way to do it, besides also asking, seeing if the media can do a story where it would be available. We can also send it out and talk about it with I have a lot of people in the community I talk with, so the city, if they're willing to put something up on their Facebook or something, it's amazing what we can get out there if we collaborate on that.
Yeah, because not having done this before, And I think a lot of people will take advantage of this opportunity if they know about it. So if we can go beyond, what we normally do to make people aware of these, like you said, work with the city or whatever. Every candidate or potential candidate here tonight talked about community engagement. So the more we can get it out there, the better. And then for Mrs. Mufeld, you would like board members then to bring this to the June meeting or the June in-service or the summer in-service or?
Well, actually, what we would propose is that if board members want to, if you agree to it, we'd like you to get started right away. Take the survey between now and the next meeting, or what we could do is set this up either in our computer training center, just on the upper level here of the Fisher Building, or we could actually recess and do this following a meeting, if next meeting, if you'd like to, or prefer to do it that way. But then the idea would be to collect all of the results and have them ready for discussion and next steps. What will we do with the information for in-service discussion, which has not been scheduled yet, but typically would be scheduled in that July timeframe.
A little more specifically, what would we be doing with these completed ones at the next meeting?
Nothing at the next meeting. You would
Nothing
have
at
it
the next
completed
meeting.
either before, or we would kind of hold you accountable to have it
No, I
completed before.
thought there
or
was a piece
after
at the next meeting.
Well,
That is only
yeah.
if the board should wish to take action and adopt this as some kind of a formal tool. That's up to the board.
May I? Okay. We have I think at least a implicit commitment that we bring this to an in-service where we can have kind of the roundtable conversation about what the results say, because there's so many ways to interpret numbers that I think that format of informality will facilitate better understanding. What would you think about that?
Oh, I agree. The discussion is much more relevant than the data surrounding it. And then, based on the discussion, what then are the next steps? What will we do to improve ourselves?
I believe thinking begets thinking. So, as you just said, it's not. Before you said it, I hadn't connected the dots here, but the results may be irrelevant, but what they spur us to, they may not be irrelevant, but what they spur us to start talking about may actually be where we really get the best, the most benefit. It just remains to be seen. We just have to be open-minded. Mrs. Wade Scott, I apologize. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot. But you've been, in all of my time observing you in your activities with the school district, the good guardian angel of self-respect and mutual respect and treating each other correctly. What do you think about this? How does this strike you, these questions that you've put to us? Is there anything we
community
should
staff
fear,
survey?
or are they okay, or what do you just because the National School Board Association survey model, is that, I mean.
Are you talking about both surveys, or are you just talking about
Sure.
which one?
Just what do you think? I sort of like conversations. So what do you think?
After being on the long-range plan,
Mhm.
that I think it's always good to have discussions.
Mhm.
And I think it's always good to hear the other side and understand when somebody does have an issue, at least listen and find out why there is an issue.
Or maybe find out there's not an issue and
Or
we're
there
doing
isn't an
things
issue.
very well.
There may be
And
no,
yes.
there may be no issues, which would be great. Just food service surveys, I always go to those. You don't get a lot of responses back. You'll get a lot that say everything's great, I love it, and then you'll get the 20 or so who say, I have specific issues, and it's great if that issue is something that you can fix and take care of. But you're very happy when you get a lot of people who say everything's okay.
I do.
But we've never done that. Here, we've never done really a climate about the school board, and
I filled out a survey just last week and was encouraged today at my place of employment. That was an employment assessment of a similar nature. And it was strongly encouraged that we provide our input to the company. So it was, other folks do this as well.
and we're currently doing an engagement survey for our parents. So I think that's an important thing as well, that we listen to what they have to say about the schools, and you'll hear good things, and you'll hear some things that maybe we need to look at.
Okay. Mr. Croner, please.
I was involved in helping design another survey recently, and I was convinced by some other people that, because they strongly felt the results, this is for the community survey, the results were only valid if people were required to put their name down, that they didn't believe that anonymous comments should be taken seriously. So do you have any discussion about whether we require community members to have to fill in their names when they submit these?
We've never done that on a survey, so I followed the protocol that we've used in the past.
We didn't have discussion about it.
Okay. And I have to say, the scientist in me has to say that, based on some previous comments, the data is the most important thing, and the conversation is only relevant if it sticks to if it accurately interprets the data. So we have to make sure that when we take the survey, that we look at the results carefully and that we analyze them in a careful way, and just keep those results in mind. I was genetically predisposed that I had to say that about the data. But anyway. Questions I have, in the evaluation of the survey, I noticed in the board survey there's like 75 questions. Are there tools for analyzing the data? Are the questions grouped in terms of board functions in any way? Are we going to have to discuss them one at a time, or how does that happen?
Yes, the questions are grouped. And I did mean to put that on my slide here, and I'm sorry I did not. They basically tabulated into 6 different categories: making decisions, functioning as a group, exercising authority, connecting to the community, working toward board improvement, and acting strategically. So those would be the general 6 categories.
So in addition to the results from individual questions, are they interpreted, are the questions in one group interpreted as a group? Like, does it reach a general conclusion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they will be grouped that way.
Okay. And one last question. As I read through the questions, there were some questions that I could answer, but my answer would be more meaningful if I could provide a sentence or two of comment. Did you decide to leave out the opportunity for us to write comments, or is that something we could add back in, like number the questions and allow us to, if we wanted to, add a sentence or two of explanation?
That's a good question. We did not leave an open blank under the questions. It's something we could add, I'm assuming, but we did want to make it an easy tool for people, to just gauge where we are at working together as a group. And then again, the discussion that we have at the meeting is more in depth and talks about, well, why might we see this strong agreement on this point, but in a similar item later on, there was disagreement. So, I mean, I think that the discussion that we have as a result of this is very important. I think we could add a free-form comment after each section break, perhaps, that you might be able to add comment if the board would like that.
Well, if you have a free-form comment after each section break, the person filling out the form could number his or her comments to match to the
Mhm.
particular questions. It would be at their discretion.
I mean, that might be, might be the best way, so the survey doesn't become cumbersome. I mean, we want a tool that's easy to use and that people actually go through it.
I would suggest just putting one at the bottom of the survey.
Yeah.
And if there's comments related to questions, you put the number of the question and put the comments. Otherwise, it's going to get, it's a lot of questions, and the data's going to become, I know how things operate at school board in-services. When we have the in-services, we'll never get to the meat of the conversation if we're in it. I think the comments are valuable, and I think they're important. I think they're going to come out in the conversation as well, but to document it is fine. I would suggest that we would put one at the end of it.
Okay. Similar to the community staff survey.
Correct.
Okay. Is the board in agreement with that?
Yeah, I think that's fine. And then obviously we have to be sure that we have adequate time for discussion.
Yes, agreed.
So, where are we? Any more board comment or question? How about this? How about Mrs. Mufelden, Mrs. Wainscott? May I ask you to continue your leadership in this and proceed as you think appropriate? And we will bring the results to our next in-service. Does the
Perfect.
timing work for that? And that sounds okay to me. Is there any community comment? Seeing none? Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mrs. Randall?
Yep.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Giroux? Mrs. Glathy, please call the roll.
Yes.
Mr. Giroux?
Yes.
Mr. Croner?
Yes.
Mrs. Muehlfeld?
Yes.
Mrs. Randall?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes, we stand adjourned.